No, not for tomorrow. He could keep it for the rest of his life, but he doesn't need it for tomorrow. Hi, Mark.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. You doing?
I'm good. I'm good. All right.
You putting a lev word in tonight?
No, I didn't ask
He
him.
doesn't do it anymore?
No, I.
One more. It's 6:29. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we're going to move into our service in a moment. Hopefully everyone's grabbed their prayer book on their way in. We're going to be on page 10, and I'll give you just a second to turn to that. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Middle of page 10, Yidid Nefesh. Yidid Nefesh Avarachaman. Yidid Nefesh Avarachaman. Mishok Avdecha El Ritzonecha Mishok Avdecha Yanananainai El Ritzonecha Ya'arutz Ya'arutz Avdecha Kemo Ayal Yishtachavei Ainanai Yanananainai El Mul Hadarecha. So I was talking to somebody recently, and they were asking why it is that love imagery is always used when we're talking about things like the Jewish people's relationship with God and Shabbat. And the answer actually is because the goal, at least for our mystics who wrote this particular melody and this particular words, is to find a way to have a mystical experience, which means to shrink the space between you and God. Right? Classically, we're down here and God is very far away. And the goal, at least according to mystical thinking, is to find a way to just unite, to get closer. And there are no people who are closer than those who truly love one another. And so tonight, as we sing this, imagine what it would take to shrink that space for you. We're on the middle of page 10 again. Midi nefesh avarachaman, yedi nefesh avarachaman mishok abdecha El ritzonecha mishok abdecha yananai El ritzonecha. So tomorrow we're going to invite Noah up to become bar mitzvah on this very bima. And so in honor of that, I'm going to invite him with his nuclear family up to light our candles and to lead us in Kiddush. We're on page 2 and 3.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'ratzon inchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziyad Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta Atanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodecha be'ahava u'v'ratzon inchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim.
You take a seat. Congrats, guys. So I'm going to invite everybody to turn now forward in their prayer books. We're on page 20 as we join together in the words of L'chadodi. L'chadodi likrat kala yananai 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 B'nei Shabbat נקבלה יעידה עידה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה שמור וזכור ודיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לשמו תפארת ולי. Clap your hands with us. לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה יעידה עידה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי היא מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה סוף מעשה במקשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה יעידה עידה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה. Verse number 5, התעוררי התעוררי כי באורק קומי אורי אורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה יעידה עידה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 9 בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי כלה בואי כלה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני ינני נקבלה יעידה עידה לך דודי לקראת כלה ינני 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 פני שבת נקבלה. I'll invite us to remain standing, page 28. Yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. We can be seated together. We're on page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch ata Adonai, Hama'ariv, Aravim. Page 32. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha avta. Torah u'mitzvot, hukim u'mishpatim, otanu lemadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shokbeinu u'vekumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratcha, uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negeh yomam v'layla yomam v'layla.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shokbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot ayatecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. We're on page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Page 40. Yain nine nine and nine and nine and nine. Yain nine nine and nine and nine and nine. Yain nine and nine and nine and nine and nine. Yain nine nine. Mi chamocha, sing with us. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, norate hilot ose pele, norate hilot ose pele. Malechutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam. Ze Elianu ve'amru, Ze Elianu ve'ameru, Adonai imlo le'olam va'ed, Adonai imlo le'olam va'ed. Yananai. Nine, 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 nine.
V'ne'emar ki fad Adonai et Yaakov, u'gielo mi'achazak mimenu, Baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
We're on page 42. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu lishalom, v'hamidenu shomrei, nu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu lishalom, v'hamidenu shomrei, nu lechaim. The indented portion on the bottom. Ushmor seitenu, uvoenu, lechaim u'shalom, me'ata v'ad olam. Sometimes I lay under the moon, and I thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds me, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will pray one day.
One day,
One day,
one day,
one day. Repeat after me. One day,
one day,
one day,
one day,
one day. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu lishalom, v'hamidenu shomrei, nu lechaim. So in a moment, we're going to move forward. We're on page 46 as we join together first in this opening meditation, and then we'll move in silence through page 62. I'll invite you to rise now. Adonai,
Simchatay tiftach, uvi agid tehilatecha.
Together. on the bottom of page 62. O se shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, v'imru, amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru, amen. Yananai, 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 Oseh shalom bimroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru, amen. Last time, yananai, 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 yananai. As we do each week, we read a special prayer for Israel that we've been reading versions of at least these words since right after October 7th. But I want to just name the fact that there is a lot of anxiety in the Jewish community right now. Now, the word anxiety is not an accident. There's a distinct difference between fear and anxiety. Fear has a stimulus right in front of you. It's a thing you are afraid of in the moment, and your fight or flight response comes up, and you get nervous and you get scared because of that thing in front of you. Anxiety is fear about a future that you've likely imagined, and that same fight or flight response comes up because you've imagined this scenario or that scenario. With the ceasefire soon to run out, and the clock ticking and not really knowing what the future is going to hold, what we're really holding right now is anxiety. Nobody knows for sure, so we tell ourselves stories, some of which may be comforting, but most of the stories that we're telling are worst case scenario, things that are making our blood boil, things that make us scared. And we're reacting not to the thing in front of us, but to the stories we're telling about what might happen. As I read this prayer, I want you to acknowledge, what are the things that make you scared? What are the things that give you anxiety right now about Israel? And how is it that you might control the story you tell yourself so you're reacting in the moment more than you're reacting to the things that you're scared of that might come in the future? Avinu Shabashamayim, Sor Yisrael v'Goalo. We beg you, O God, to bless the state of Israel and all of Israel's inhabitants. Makor Chaim, source of life, bless and strengthen those who defend the land and ensure their safe and speedy return home. Bless them and guide them. Kadosh Baruch Hu, holy and blessed one, show Israel's leaders your path so they may act with wisdom, courage, and dedication, and that they may be unwavering in their pursuit of peace. Strengthen their hearts, but keep their hearts from hardening. Matir Asurim, freer of captives. Return all those who are kidnapped to their homes safe and sound, without the spilling of any more innocent blood, without any more souls being tarnished by horrific acts. Ba'al harachamim, master of compassion, help us to hold the humanity and the heartache of the Jewish people, of all the residents of the state of Israel, while also holding the humanity and the dignity of the Palestinian people. As we are made in your image, remind us of your ways. Spread over us a shelter of peace and fulfill the vision of your prophets. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. They shall never again know war.
We turn with our hearts still wide open to page 253 as we have the opportunity to offer a Mishaberach every time we gather together in prayer. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hakolim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen.
Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom. So this week's Torah portion introduces us to a theme that we're actually going to follow for basically 4 or so weeks from now. After the Jews have left Egypt, after they've stood at the base of Mount Sinai and received the Torah, they then get a command from God to build God a home, to build a tabernacle, a mishkan in Hebrew, that from time to time, God will come and visit. It'll be the place where the people perform sacrifices. In a way, it's kind of the prototype for the temple that will eventually come. And by the way, this building, at least in the ancient world, was meant to be grand. There was gold, there was silver, there was bronze. In fact, the curtains have a specific color, which is called argamon, which is the priestly robes in the ancient world. Right after, for example, in the Purim story, when Mordechai is kind of crowned as the king's right-hand man after he vanquishes Haman, the big moment that he gets given that honor is when the king takes off his purple robes and gives them to Mordechai. Well, that color, those robes, were essentially plastered all over the walls of the ancient Mishkan. And it cost a lot of money to build. In fact, the people had to give with their hearts, and they did. They showed up. So much so that, in fact, Moses had to turn them away, saying, thank you for all of the supplies and all of the money. I have enough now. I'm ready now to start to build. It was a grand win at a time when the ancient ancestors needed desperately that grand win. What's interesting, though, is that in this week's Torah portion, the story of the beginning of the building of the tabernacle actually gets paired with a really random section later on in the Bible from the book of Kings. Now, if you don't know much about the Haftarah, I want to explain what that is. Each and every Shabbat, and for our 5th grade students who are here, you, by the way, are going to not only chant a little from the Torah, when you become B'nai Mitzvah, you're also going to chant from some part later on in the books of the prophets from the rest of the Bible. And usually that part, which is called the Haftarah, is thematically linked somehow to the Torah portion itself. The rabbis 2,000 years ago who matched up and said, we want this part from the book of Exodus and this part from the book of Kings, did it because they felt like there was something in common between the two sections. So what exactly is this week's Haftarah portion? Basically, there is a king, and his name is Yoash. And he walks around, and he notices that the ancient temple in Jerusalem is in deep, deep disrepair. Now, the temple, interestingly enough, is itself modeled after that ancient Mishkan. The people build this kind of movable temple that they can wander around for 40 years with, and then when they finally get into Jerusalem, a king whose name is Solomon builds this temple, and the temple in Jerusalem is as grand, if not more so, than the Mishkan itself. In fact, it takes so much money to build this temple that the people who live up north in Israel, who have to pay the taxes to build the temple, end up rebelling. The temple is so big, so wonderful, that the building of it splits ancient Israel in two, as those who live near the temple say to themselves, this is amazing, and those who live far away say, why am I giving all of this money for the elites in Jerusalem to have this building? By the way, that may sound familiar. And this temple, this opulent place for God, we find in the very beginning of the Haftarah has completely fallen into disrepair because the Jews have messed up. They have not accounted for the maintenance of the building. The people pay taxes to Jerusalem for the upkeep, but the priests who are living there, who are doing the work, are sustained and fed through those donations. They take the money, buy food with it, because they can't own land themselves, and ultimately they live off of the largesse of the people who are giving money in the moment. Now, these particular priests mess up because they don't put anything away for the rainy day. And when King Yoash walks away, walks up to the temple, he realizes they have messed up. So he comes up with this grand plan, and he basically takes all the money away from these priests, puts it aside, and says to the priests, we're going to find a different way to feed and clothe you. And through kind of the manipulation of sacrifices and what gets eaten, the priests get taken care of. But he says to the priests, look, we have had a deal for a while. You're going to get the money, and then on your time off, you're going to do the upkeep of the temple. You'll be doing the hammering and the nailing. You'll be doing the cutting. You'll be doing the sanding. You'll make sure that this building looks the way it does. But actually, why is it that we're giving you, the spiritual leaders of the Jewish people, the task of the building itself? In our world, it's irrelevant to you. Maybe we should take this money and we should give it to artisans and we should give it to craftsmen who actually know what they're doing. So King Yoash takes that money away from these priests and gives it to the craftsmen and to the artisans and says to them, do us a favor and fix this building up. And immediately they start making these major capital improvements on the temple, and the temple looks extraordinary. They bring it back to its luster. It looks the way that it was supposed to, the place that's worthy of the argamon, of the kind of kingly robes on the wall. And that ultimately is where the Haftarah ends. Now, I think it's clear that the two are connected thematically insofar as we're talking about a beautiful structure getting built. But in fact, if you think about it, the Torah and the Haftarah are as different as they possibly could be. The Torah is about the grand building of the tabernacle from anew. It's the project that starts in the minds of God and the people, and it's brought to fruition. And the Haftarah is itself the cautionary tale that just because you get a win doesn't mean you should rest on your laurels. Anyone, by the way, who's ever updated something in their house only to kind of blink 20 years later and say, didn't I just do this, when they have to replace it, leads one to remember, in fact, that one can't just rest on the thing that you did in the past. Anything that is successful constantly needs upkeep. Now, we can talk about that in reference to buildings all that we want. I mean, it's no surprise to you that we're undergoing a capital campaign exactly for this problem here in our congregation. But I want us to think about this outside of that, and more in line with those other things that you do in your life when you have that win that you just let go, right? It might be, for example, that big project that you do at work and then feeling like you need to coast instead of having to put in the work to sustain those skills. It might be that you graduate from school and then you never pick up another scholarly article on the thing that you have been studying. You never go to that conference. You never do that additional education. You let yourself rot away in the way that we let the building rot away. Or it might be society. That, some law gets passed, some win happens, and instead of being on the leaders to continue the good work, you rest in your laurels, and before you know it, those things that you cared about get walked back. Or the social steps forward actually become dated because society changes around you. The key lesson when pairing the Torah and the Haftarah together is that winning once is not enough. Doing well once is not enough. The world functions by entropy, not just buildings. Now, that's a big word to our fifth graders who may not know what entropy is. But entropy is the idea that something that is whole usually crumbles and becomes broken. You have a piece of concrete. After a while, that concrete will end up dissolving. And everything faces entropy. You have to do the work in order to sustain it. You have to continue to build. You have to continue to nurture. You have to continue to tend. And if you don't, you will wake up as Joash did, realizing he had erred. If something matters to you, you tend to it. If something matters to it, you nurture it. If something matters to you, you sustain it. You hold it firm. Because before you know it, that thing that is fresh, that thing that is new, that thing that is ripe will become dated, rotten, and gone. It takes work to keep things as they are. And our Torah teaches us just how important it is to sustain the things we care about. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to turn to page 282 as we rise together for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot ha'adama, shelo samchokenu kahem, Vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anavnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo, echad.
Please be seated. In a moment, we're going to say Kaddish for those who we have loved and who we've lost. And I want to pause for a second before I read the list of names, just to make a note about the fact that ultimately what we're doing when we observe yard sites is exactly what I just spoke about in our sermon. Right? When you lose someone, their memory is so bright, their memory is so deep. But the truth is, if you do nothing for that memory, it will fade. And if you do nothing to nurture that memory to the next generation or the generation after, then all the more so will that memory fade. The act of saying Kaddish, the act of yard site, is ultimately tending to the memory in the way that those priests should have been tending to the temple itself. It's sustaining it. It's reminding yourself of the person. It's telling the stories that need to be said. It's taking the time to reflect. And if you do, it means that that life that was so bright just might actually feel a little bit more bright in a time where often time will make it fade. So as I call your loved one, I'll invite you to rise and honor their memory. Joseph Abramson, Marie Applebaum, Paula Belove, Addie Berlin, Leonard Berman, Abraham Block, Sally Elizabeth Karp, Sanford Cohen, Albert Feiertag, Freddie Fishbein, Lisa Fleischman, Esther Friedman, Milton Genzer, Sarah Goffin, Isidore Hyman, Harry Isaacs, William Kaffenbaum, Sylvia Kanarik, Buzzy Klausner, Lillian Krulowitz, Florence Lazarus, Ronaldo Leon, Joel Linder, Carla Long, Lillian Lusgarten, Jay Matarazzo, Estelle McKinnon, Ignacia Melendez de Olivas, Henry Molinoff, Pinchas Morgenstern, Frida Robbins, Louis Rockowitz, Mark Rosenberg, Helen Sackel, Sheila Scholak, Bruce Serlin, Donald Shaw, Janice Schechter, Louis Silber, Bruce Tenon, David Tucker, Susan Waxstein, Beatrice Weingast, Lillian Weinstock, Tamar Weisberg, Joseph Yorish, and Gary Zaslav. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning, Jarvis Tim Allen, grandfather of Melanie Robbins, Henry Lee Schwartz, father of Kendra Poster, and Irving Pizer, father of Jeffrey Pizer. In addition, I'll invite anyone who's observing a yard site that may not have been on this list or who is within their one-year period of mourning to please rise and honor the memory of your loved one. Again, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyom echon uv'chayet echol Beit Israel, ba'agala uvizman karib v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavarach le'olam olamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei kudasha b'rechu, le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiram b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. So a few announcements before we move into our closing song. So for our fifth graders and their families, dinner is going to be served right next door. You can either go through these doors or right outside. What I'll ask, though, is that you don't take any food yet. Come inside, get settled, meet someone new. I'll lead you in motzi, and then you'll grab the food. Tomorrow morning, we have Torah study at 8:30, and then we're going to be joining together in services here at 10 a.m. as we invite Noah to the Bima, and he reads Torah for the very first time publicly as bar mitzvah, and we want to congratulate him and his family. A few things coming up. The first is that on the 10th of March, we're kicking off basically what is like a 5 or 6 week period of voting in the World Zionist Congress. Now, if you don't know what that is, Israel allocates a bunch of money for a group of diaspora Jews. And by the way, the World Zionist Congress goes back to the birth of Zionism in Basel, Switzerland in like the 1890s, okay? To come together and to ultimately vote on how this money is allocated. And there's lots of different parties from lots of different, I would say like persuasions of Judaism. And the Reform movement is running a slate. And so we're going to be encouraging you to vote. And whether you vote for the Reform slate or from some other slate that speaks to your values, understand that your vote matters because the number of delegates that are then sent are determined by how big the parties each are. And they will determine what happens to those millions and millions of dollars and whether they're being used for your values or not. And so I want to really encourage people, please vote in the World Zionist Congress elections. Please pay attention to when we launch it here, and it's happening all around the world. Literally every piece of the diaspora community is voting in this right now. So that's one piece. The second is Purim. One thing about Purim, if you don't know at our congregation, is it lasts for like over a week. It's longer than Sukkot for some reason. And that's because not this Sunday, but next Sunday, we kick Purim off with our family Purim Carnival. We'll invite you to come, pay attention if you're in the religious school, just of kind of like what the timing looks like and how it interfaces with religious school, because it looks very, very different than a normal religious school day. Then that Thursday afterwards, we have the actual Purim reading of the Megillah, and we're going to spice it up a little bit this year. We're always trying because we have such big bookend events that we always have a bit of a smaller crowd that comes. This year, I'm really excited for this idea that I had. I'm getting 10 people. No. I'm getting 10 people who each have emailed me and said, I would write a melody in the style of whatever it is, indie rock, bluegrass, whatever. And then I went on ChatGPT and I said to it, give me lyrics for it. And they then have the challenge, and they get it like a week or two ahead of time, of turning those lyrics into the style of song that they want. And so we're going to hear how they did with that challenge. And we're going to hear all of these different styles of music, each done to a summary of chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 4, chapter 5, which I think is a pretty fun way to try out ChatGPT and Purim. So that's going to be on that Thursday. And then we have our big Purim spiel, our Greece Purim spiel, which is like essentially 2 weeks from Saturday night. And so come, it's always a highlight. This is easily one of the most rehearsed and produced Purim spiels in the country here at our congregation. And so come, bring your kids, get a babysitter, whatever you want to do, and join us that Saturday night. So, and one more thing. We have a guest speaker coming on the 21st of March, and I'm very excited about this guest speaker. His name is Ahmed Faoud Al-Khatib, and he's a Palestinian thinker who is coming to our congregation, and he's going to be speaking. And I want to say that often people come up to me because it's very important for me to be a quote unquote moderate voice when it comes to Israel, right? And they will say to me, where are the moderate voices in the Palestinian community? And I say, I promise, like the voices exist and they are important and they are loud. This is an example of a moderate voice in the Palestinian community that I really want to encourage you to hear. He has something really important and wonderful to offer, and I think that it's really important that we show up en masse to hear him speak. And so I want to invite you to come to our congregation for Friday night services on the 21st of March. So with that, we are going to end our service with one more kind of call for peace and love with the words, Olam Chesed Yimaneh. And I'll say also, as you're headed out, sometimes our community can feel a little bit siloed, right? We've got our fifth graders going over there for dinner. We've got everybody else going to the lobby to have some cookies and some, fruit and an oneg. I want to just encourage us, talk to somebody outside of your silo tonight, meet somebody new, because it's great how intergenerational community is, but only if you make an effort do you actually bridge those generations. So, Olam Chesed. You can find it on the screen. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Nai, Nai, Yananai, Nai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Nai, Nai, Yananai, Nai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yanai, Yanai, Yanai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yanai, Yanai, Yanai. I will build this world from love. Yananai, Yanai, Yanai, Yanai. And you must build this world from love. Yananai, Yanai, Yanai, Yanai. And if we build this world from love, Yananai, Yanai, 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 then God will build this world from love. Yananai, Yanai, Yanai. Clap your hands, Olam Chesed. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yanai, Yanai, Yanai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yanai, Yanai, Yanai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Yanai, Yanai, Yanai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yananai, Nai, Nai, Yananai, Nai. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Oh, good.